Okay, let's unpack this, because today we are staring down a fundamental contrast that I think gets right to the heart of government accountability.
It really does. On one side, you have this huge official document.
Huge is right. An external government review. It's nearly 200 pages thick, and it's focused on improving safety for a very vulnerable population. And right next to it, the invoice.
And that invoice is what forces the investigative questions. It is for this highly specific, almost peculiar amount of $74,999.
That number, 74,999, that's our launch pad today. This whole deep dive is about the context and, well, the ledger. Our mission is really to answer two central questions for you, the taxpayer. First, what exactly did this huge report pay for, and why was this review ordered specifically when it was, focusing on such a narrow timeline?
And second, the big one. Why is the price exactly $74,999?
A number that seems to sit almost intentionally, right at the edge of a policy line.
Right. And what we've done is taken the official documents, the public news releases, the internal report's own engagement letter, the procurement facts, and we're sticking strictly to what those sources can support.
No speculation.
None. We are operating in a calm, documentary tone, just focusing only on the factual framework of this whole assignment.
Exactly. We're looking at the frame today, not the painting itself. And to start, let's define that scope. This review was commissioned by the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
We'll just call it MSDPR.
Right, MSDPR. And it is not some massive sweeping review of the entire social support system.
That is such a vital piece of context. The scope is narrow, it's specific, it's a review of home sharing.
And for anyone who might not be familiar, what is that exactly?
Home sharing is a subsidized residential care model where a vulnerable adult, someone with developmental disabilities, lives in the private home of a service provider.
So it's a crucial service.
It's a crucial service, and this review's purpose, according to all the documents, was focused squarely on safety and quality, but only within that one segment.
Okay, so specific population, specific living arrangement, and the focus is on safeguards plus oversight.
Precisely.
That brings us to part one. Why was this ordered, and why now in 2025? If this model has been around for decades, why start counting policy changes only from 2018?
That timeline is what's so fascinating because the context is just laid out so clearly in the official record. So the ministry, MSDPR, commissioned the review in May of 2025.
Okay.
Then in the provincial news release that came out just a few weeks later, the stated goal is, and I'm paraphrasing here, to ensure that service changes made since 2018 are delivering the highest quality of service possible.
So 2018 is the documented starting pistol for the policies they're now evaluating. What happened? What event created that starting point, according to the government's own documents?
Well, the very same public news release links those changes directly to what happened following the death of Florence Girard. The release states explicitly that the government made changes to its processes and oversight following her death in 2018, which happened while she was in a home-sharing arrangement.
So this wasn't some random cyclical audit that just happened to land in 2025.
Not at all.
It's publicly framed as a necessary check. A check on whether safety reforms that were put in place after a specific tragic event were actually enough.
And we have to be very careful here. We can't claim to know the full internal motive, but we can state what the documents support.
Right.
And what they support is this. The ministry publicly links this entire review process to changes made since 2018, and it directly names Florence Girard's death as the context that drove those original changes. The paper trail is just explicit.
And the assignment summary for the review, I mean, the actual document that outlined the work for the contractor,
Yeah.
that's even clearer on the 2025 timing, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. The official engagement letter, which is inside the report itself, it provides the final piece of the timeline puzzle.
What does it say?
It explains that while Florence Girard died in 2018, the coroner's inquest into her death was held in, wait for it, January 2025.
Ah, okay. Okay, so the sequence is critical. The 2018 tragedy leads to immediate policy changes. But the public call for accountability and the official assessment of those changes was renewed by that coroner's inquest just a few months before the review was ordered.
Exactly. The report actually states that the review was requested to assess whether the service provider, which is Community Living BC, or CLBC, had improved safety with its changes since 2018, following the recommendations from that 2025 inquest.
That makes the 2018 to 2025 window make perfect sense, at least based on the sources we have.
It does.
The assignment wasn't to critique the entire history of CLBC since, the mid-2000s when it was created.
Yeah.
The assignment was specifically to evaluate their recent response to major safety concerns.
The client, in this case the government, set that tight frame. Evaluate policy effectiveness after 2018, especially in light of the renewed focus from the inquest. The scope is locked in. Standards for safety, quality of life, accountability, and oversight.
All framed by the concerns that were highlighted by that tragic timeline.
That's right.
Okay, so part one is clear. We know the deep, tragic why this report was ordered. Now let's pivot to the purely mechanical how, and how strange the numbers are. Let's move to part two. The $74,999 question. Why that exact number?
This is the number that it catches everyone's eye. Why not a clean $75,000 or, an estimate like $85,000 if the work was expected to be complex?
It seems so precise.
The fact that it is exactly $1 below the next major milestone, it feels calculated.
It feels like driving right up to the line but then slamming on the brakes just before you cross it.
Yeah.
Now, again, we have to be really clear here.
Yes.
We cannot know the motive. We cannot know the intent of the person who set that price tag. We just don't have access to the internal procurement justification documents.
Correct. We can't prove intent. But what we do have is the policy context that makes that number so significant. And this all comes down to the government of BC's own procurement rules.
Where do we find those?
They're in their core policy and procedures manual. It's called the CPPM. And that manual dictates how public bodies have to solicit and contract for services.
And what's the specific rule? What's the threshold that makes $74,999 a magic number?
For services, the threshold where a dramatically different and much more public posting regime applies is explicitly $75,000.
So just to be crystal clear, $74,999 is objectively $1 below the point in which government procurement rules become significantly more strict about public competition.
Exactly. Below that $75,000 services threshold, the minimum requirement for the ministry is typically just to obtain 3 quotes from vendors.
And above $75,000.
Above that, they are generally required to post a public solicitation on the BC Bid website, which opens the contract to a much, much wider pool of potential competitors.
Let's just clarify that for you, the listener, because that difference is massive. When we talk about obtaining 3 quotes, that can often just mean the government picks 3 consultants they already know or trust, asks them for a price, and then chooses the best fit from that very limited pool.
That is the practical implication, yes. A public posting on BC Bid, on the other hand, is an open call. It's an open call to any qualified vendor who sees it.
Which maximizes competition.
It maximizes competition, it could potentially reduce the cost, and it absolutely increases transparency by showing the public exactly who applied and why the winning bid was ultimately chosen.
And if the price is kept at $74,999, the government is only required to seek those 3 quotes. It fundamentally shields the contractor selection process from the highest level of public scrutiny.
That is the objective reality. The document itself is crucial. It's focused on the safety of vulnerable citizens, and the cost is substantial. Yet the method of securing the contractor operates under the least transparent policy threshold available for a contract of this size.
It just raises a really legitimate and important question of public interest.
It does.
Because it forces the taxpayer to ask, how is the contractor chosen for this highly specialized, high-stakes, nearly $75,000 job? Did they simply ask 3 known entities for bids, or was a broader competition genuinely considered?
The policy allows for the first option, which is why the specificity of that price tag generates such compelling scrutiny. Whether it was intentional or not, the choice of $74,999 ensures a less public process.
And just to ground the scale of this for everyone one more time, we're talking about tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars spent on a policy document. The cost per page alone helps us understand the significant scale of the money involved.
Which really reinforces why the selection process matters so much to public accountability.
Right. When you combine the critical importance of the subject matter safety oversight for vulnerable citizens with the sheer scale of the cost, the objective fact that the price rests $1 below that transparency threshold.
It becomes a central point of inquiry. You can't ignore it.
Okay, so we've nailed the frame. We have established 2 major document-supported facts for you.
First, the review was commissioned in May 2025 by MSDPR. Its scope was tightly focused on home sharing safety and oversight, and it was explicitly framed as a check on whether policy changes implemented since 2018 were sufficient.
Connecting the context directly to the 2018 death of Florence Girard and the 2025 coroner's inquest that followed.
Correct.
And second, the cost of that review, $74,999, is precisely $1 below the government's $75,000 services procurement threshold.
Raising a clear, legitimate question about the transparency and the competitive nature of how that contractor was selected under the government's own core policy and procedures manual rules.
So the trigger and the price. That was just the scaffolding. That's how this document came to be.
It is. And now we can move from the ledger and the timeline to the actual substance of the report.
That's right. Next time, we finally open the report itself. We're going to detail what the experts actually found about the sufficiency of those 2018 safety safeguards.
And what specific, crucial recommendations they made for government oversight going forward. We've established the context and the cost. Next time, we get to the core of the matter, the findings.